knows which lawyer you should choose. Other lawyers know. They've invited Gary C. Johnson to teach his method of judo law in Denver, Atlanta, New Orleans, and across the nation. Gary used judo law to set the record for the largest personal injury verdict in the history of Kentucky. Now, which lawyer should you choose? The choice is clear. Gary C. Johnson. Dial pound hurt. This is an advertisement.
If you're hurt, injured, don't waste time. Gary Johnson cries for every dime.
Welcome to Simply the Law, a program created by attorney Gary C. Johnson. Simply the Law provides free legal advice and encourages happiness and quality of life. Now, here's Simply the Law with Gary C. Johnson.
Hello, everyone. Welcome into Simply the Law. I'm Keith Casebolt, and it is so good to be with my friend, Gary C. Johnson.
Oh, is it good to be here.
It is great.
How you guys and gals doing? Have you been dodging COVID? You kept away from it, right? Well, you know, Keith and I, we try as best friends to share things.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely.
We do. Keith doesn't know when to stop sharing, though. Now, you know what I mean? He goes out, gets COVID, and shares it with me.
When I told Gary, it's the gift that keeps on giving. And it did give for about 2 weeks, didn't it?
I think about 10 days.
Yeah.
So I guess the reason I'm saying that to you folks is here we are, perfectly fine, both of us. We're immune for at least a while. And for me, even though I've got several years more than Keith on me, it didn't bother me as nearly as bad as it did Keith for some reason.
It's completely different. And, you know, in fact, my whole family, my 2 sons and my wife had it, we all had different symptoms. Some worse, some better. But the biggest thing was, Gary and I stayed in touch every day. I'd call and say, how are you feeling? Or he'd call me and say, what symptoms do you have now? But it was a reality check for both of us, I think, in the fact that we took it pretty serious, and it was a pretty scary thing.
I guess what I'm going to share with you folks is you hear all of this scare. Now, there are some people, a very small minority of people, that when it gets a hold of them, it will kill, period. But the vast majority of my friends that are watching, if you get it, you may have a rough time for a few days, but you'll probably be okay. One of the hardest things for me having it wasn't the fact it was bothering me that much, because it wasn't. I walked every day and just went on with my life, stayed away from people, quarantined. Was the fear of what I'd heard on TV, that it was going to get in my lungs and put me on a ventilator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That was one of the hardest things. I kept waiting. Well, how's my breath? How's my breath?
It's true. I mean, if I got stopped up or anything like that, I would think, is it coming? Is this it?
Yeah, this is it.
But you know, Gary, the other thing that I think you and I found out is, even though your symptoms were less, you realized that it's still dangerous and it does bad things to good people. And your symptoms and what happened to you is not necessarily what might happen to someone else. So the message is, you don't want it.
You don't know. You don't. That's why you need to wear your mask, social distance, stay away from groups until you can get the vaccine. Even though it wasn't any major horrible thing for me, I don't want it again because it was not any fun. Next, and I hope I never get it again, good Lord willing.
Yeah.
You get another thing that Keith and I both discussed endlessly was, when you get something like that, you really get a new reverence for life. Keith, share a little bit of what you wanted to share with me about reverence for life now that you've been through this. I mean, it's a...
You know, I called Gary and I said, all these times on the radio show or on the television show, you say, oh, it's so good to be here. It's so good to be here another day. And I said, I now feel guilty for not having the reverence for what you say, because I'm laying there under the covers, freezing, wondering if it's going to attack me. And I said, Gary is right. This is an eye-opener. It is good to be here. No, my friend, it's wonderful to be here. It's wonderful to be able to be with people. And one other thing I want to add real quickly. This was one of the other problems. We were trying to be safe. I went and got tested and tested negative. Gary and I were together 10 hours later. 2 days later, I tested positive. It changed in that 48-hour window, and because of that, I ended up positive and then Gary, but we were trying to be safe.
And I guess the point he's making is, even though he had tested negative, he had been exposed. And they say when you've been exposed, you need to quarantine for 10 days. That is a fact. We now know that, don't we, Keith?
Oh, Gary and I we learned quite a bit about it,
But
didn't
Keith
we?
and I, being smarter than the average bears, assumed that even though we both knew he had been exposed, that if he tested negative, it was okay for us to do a radio show, which we did. So 2 days later, he's positive. About 5 days later, I'm positive.
And that was the wisdom I had. I tested negative at 6 o'clock on a Monday. You and I were together like 8 o'clock on Tuesday, so it wasn't 12 hours later. I'm thinking I'm okay, but I had been exposed and was carrying it, and I transmitted it to you.
And I guess that's why, so learn from our mistake on this, friends. If you've been exposed, the 10-day quarantine should be mandatory for you, because you don't know in that 10 days when you're going to get it, and you don't know when in that 10 days you're going to be able to transmit it to somebody else. Now, fortunately, over the years, I've exercised every day, still do. I've tried to watch the food I eat. I take no medicine of any kind. I've tried to stay healthy. Because of that, I think is the reason that I was able to get through this without any real serious problems of any kind. So my friends, I want to tell you, if you're not taking care of your health today, and you're letting your health go to wherever it's going because you're working and trying to have wealth and other things, what'll happen is you'll gather you some wealth, you'll lose your health, then when you get older, you'll take all your wealth, try to buy back your health. Not smart, huh?
You know, I like what you did on the radio the other day. You said, I have privately said thank you to Gary C. Johnson from 5 years ago, the guy who got out and walked when he didn't want to, the guy that exercised, the guy that dropped the weight when he needed to. You thanked the guy 5 years ago for the health you have today. Yeah.
When we look at ourselves in the future, there are some studies that say we consider ourselves a stranger. We don't consider ourselves in the future as being us in how we deal with it. So therefore, we can be very mean to the stranger by not taking care of our health today. Then 5 years from now, that stranger, which is still us, is looking and saying, my God, what did you do to me?
Yeah.
By not taking care of yourself and trying to be healthy.
Well, there's no doubt about it. Had you not done the things that you did 5 years ago, your experience with this could have been a whole heck of a lot different.
I suspect I wouldn't be here doing this program.
Yeah.
Is bottom line on it. So, friends, lesson. Have a true reverence for life. Remember your own uniqueness. The next time you're out where there's a crowd, whenever that may be, a huge crowd, or even if you watch a huge crowd on TV, I want you to look carefully to see if you see anyone that even vaguely resembles you. Period. I tried this the other day, and I was watching where there's one of these rallies or whatever, and there wasn't a soul there that even vaguely resembled me. There wasn't anybody there that vaguely resembled each other. Now that is the uniqueness of being born and being a human being. Don't ever, my friends, please, and I've said this on this program before and I'm going to say it again, don't ever let anyone talk to you as though you're anything other than a unique individual deserving of everything this life has to offer. Don't do it, because you are. And you are important, and you have contributions to make. And there's things that you can do better than 10,000 other people if you'll just do them.
You know, after getting over the COVID, there was this humbling experience, the reverence, as you said, for life. And I told you the first day we did the radio show together, I said, I hope I'd never, ever go back to the way I was, because now I am so appreciative for being healthy, for being alive, for being able to be here with you today, to talk to our friends, to see old friends.
So, my friends, for me and Keith, be safe, take care of yourself, wear your mask, don't get that COVID if you can possibly keep from it. Start exercising, taking care of your health, movement, taking care of that so that stranger 5 years from now won't look back and say, oh my God, you killed me by not doing what you should do.
Absolutely.
But do it for yourself. And you will be amazed at the rewards you will get from it. And you can do it. Don't trade health for wealth. As you get older, you will give all your wealth for a little bit of health. That's just the way life is. We're going to take a break, and we're going to come right back, my friends, and we'll talk some more to you.
It is so good to be here. The great news is the vaccine is coming. So we've got about another 2 or 3 months that we're going to have to do this. But what Gary is telling you, stay safe. We got to get through it. Stay with us. We'll be back. Simply the Law with Gary C. Johnson right after this message.
People are asking, what is judo law? Judo is a martial art that uses the opponent's strength to defeat them by not opposing it directly. Gary C. Johnson created a method of practicing law based upon that principle. It worked so well, he named it judo law. To see the results, go to GaryCJohnson.com. To have Gary and his team of judo lawyers go to work for you, dial pound HURT. This is an advertisement.
Welcome back into Simply the Law. Gary and I were just talking during the break. The difference before we got COVID, I got to go to the grocery store, I have to go pick things up. The difference after COVID, woohoo, I get to go to the grocery store. I get to shop. And I'm using that as an analogy, but it's amazing how you have a reverence for things that you used to think was a chore.
That's right. It makes a difference, folks. You know, you have a lot of time to think when you're in quarantine. And one of the things that I got to thinking about, and maybe you guys and gals can expand on it a little bit, is how complex our lives really are and how hard it is to live. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, if you're alone, you're really miserable because there's nothing worse than being alone, right? And you want companionship. You do not want to be alone. So what do? We involve and bring other people into our lives so we won't be alone. And guess what? Along with them comes all their problems. Right?
Yes.
So we have to deal with all those problems that come with having people in our lives. And it's a constant balancing and struggle. But our attitude and how we deal with this is the key to living. Once we accept the fact that there's going to be ups and downs, and that everything is a trade-off. If we want to be alone, that's not good. If we want people in our life, we have to accept the fact that they are human beings, with all the frailties that come with being human. And if you expect those people in your lives, whether you're married to them or your children or whatever, to be perfect, you're going to be constantly disappointed. So, my friends, choose to say to yourself, yes, I want these people in my life. I do not want to be alone. Therefore, I will accept the fact that they have the frailties of being human. I won't judge them any harsher than I will judge myself, which means they won't get judged very harshly at all if I use me as a measure, right? And, you know, it was just a thought I had.
You know, what amazes me about what you're saying, from the time I started working with you and met you, I've never seen you get angry over things. I've never really even seen you consider them to be problems. It's almost like you treat it as a challenge, as a crossword puzzle, and you just go to work on trying to solve the puzzle. You don't let it affect you in that way.
I learned years ago that anger is a luxury poor people can't afford. I'll say that again. Anger is a luxury that poor people can't afford. And being poor, I knew I couldn't afford anger. So I set out and determined that I would control my anger. That instead of getting angry when something happened or someone did something, I would look at it and say, now, why did they do that? Why did they do that? They must have thought that it was in their best interest to do it, or they wouldn't have done it. I don't think they did it out of pure meanness. It's very rare you see somebody just up and say, I'm going to be mean today and I'm going to do this to somebody. Well, is it because they dumbed up and did it? Is it because they didn't know any better? And you will find that if you start wondering and looking at what that is making you angry from what someone did, you'll realize there's no reason to be angry. None. Zero.
So you figured out a long time ago, like when the guy came and said you were plotting against him, you figured out if people are trying to help themselves or better themselves or their family, they're probably going to make somebody mad in the process, but they didn't set out to hurt that individual. They were trying to benefit themselves or improve their own life.
I'm going to throw one out to you folks. Everything you do in life every day, you do it because you think that's what you ought to do, or you wouldn't do it, right?
Oh, the other day I made the worst mistake in the world, and Gary said, why did you do that, Keith? And I said, because I just didn't know any better. I thought it was the right thing to do. You're right. At the time, it seemed like the right thing to do, but I had opened my mouth and made a statement that you had clearly told me would be negative for me, and I did it anyway. It was totally dumb. There was nothing I could do to defend it other than saying I thought it was the right thing to do at the time, but it wasn't.
So, my friends, when someone else does something, they're doing it because they think it's what they ought to do, or they wouldn't do it. So why should you get angry and mad?
So you're saying if we have this great ability to forgive ourselves for the stupidity we do, why can't we forgive others?
And trust me, when I go back to this, there's going to be stupidity all over the place. As my wife Anita told me a long time ago, looking at me, she says, you know, you're only as stupid as you are. And I said, I believe she's talking about me. And it's true. But it's such a fun thing to be alive. It's such a fun thing to watch. It's such a fun thing to watch other people. You will never get angry if you take the attitude that I'm talking to you about of looking at it and saying, why? Why did this happen? What were they thinking that would be in their best interest for them to do this? Understanding, very rarely you will ever see something done by a human being that's just malicious and intentional to cause harm. That is as rare as a hen's tooth. It's out of not knowing any better, not being as smart as maybe somebody else, which I have that problem myself frequently. And it's living this wonderful, glorious life, my friends. And it's out there for each and every one of you to enjoy and to be part of and to participate in. And if I could just reach out and through that screen and touch you, I'd say to you, reverence for life, reverence for your uniqueness, reverence for how important you are, and live your life in a way that you're never angry. You accept people to be people. You don't expect people around you to be perfect. You sure don't expect them to be the way you are, because if you do, you're going to be sorely disappointed. Sorely disappointed. And it may be better off they're not the way we are. You understand what I'm saying? But it's a wonderful, wonderful life. And we're coming up on the holidays, and I wanted to talk to you folks a little bit about this reverence for life and how important it is. We're getting ready to come up on Christmas. Isn't it a wonderful time of year? And right now people are saying, oh, I hate Christmas. Oh, no, 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 no. No. It's Jesus' birthday. It's a time for you, the children, to just see magical things. It's a time for you to see magical things and to be part of it. Don't go out and buy a bunch of junk just because you feel like you're obligated to buy it. That's foolish. You don't need to do that. Get somebody a little note or a card saying, thank you for being my friend. I really like you. Thank you for being in my life. Instead of buying them some garbage they're going to throw away, and it's going to take what little money you got to buy it. Don't do it. You don't need to. That's not what Christmas is about. Christmas is about giving, and mostly it's about giving of yourself. And that's the key to it all. We're going to take another break, and we're going to be right back.
Yeah, listen, friends, if it sounds like that Gary and I are both happy to be alive, let me tell you something. We are, and we're so happy that you've joined us. Stay with us. We'll be back to close out the program, Simply the Law, right after you see this.
Hello, I'm Gary C. Johnson. Here in the Bluegrass, we look at a team's record to see if it's a good team. Our team has several multi-million-dollar verdicts, and in 2002, our team set the record for the largest personal injury verdict in the state of Kentucky. It's still the record. No other law firm has even come close to it.
GaryCJohnson.com 800-337-4002.
Welcome back into Simply the Law. Gary's got something he's going to go to, but that last segment, when you talked about judging and criticizing, you taught me one of the greatest lessons in my life when I was complaining about something my oldest son was doing, and I was complaining, and Gary said, Keith, when he does something that you haven't done, then start complaining. And I said, Gary, I got to go home and give that kid a hug because he is a perfect child compared to me. But here I was judging and criticizing.
That's right. Do it all the time.
Yeah, great lesson.
Folks, you may remember Bridget Clay. She wrote this book, Working Through the Puzzles of Grief, when she had a death in her family. And Bridget was a physical ed teacher down at Prestonsburg and for years, and then she retired. And she's got some wisdom in this book. And I just happened to pick it up again, actually this morning, and I want to share you one of the things she says about Christmas, okay? Now remember, when Bridget wrote this book, she was going through a really hard time with her grief. So this is from her heart, okay? And thank you, Bridget, for letting me do this, okay? It starts off, there is no pain so great as the memory of joy in present grief. Remember joy and sorrow? Mm. It is the Christmas season, a wonderful time for all of us, exchanging presents and visiting with family. But for some of us who have lost loved ones this year, it is a time of sadness, remembering those that have gone on. We still want to feel the joy of the season, but we are also empty of the emotions that drive us. Instead of feeling joy, we feel pain. Sometimes we don't want to face. We just want it to pass us by. But Christmas is the birth of Jesus. We can all celebrate that. Whether we are sad or happy, we can take the time to acknowledge what He has done for us. We may not feel like celebrating in the traditional way, but our hearts can be full if we remember this is the greatest day on earth. Without Him, what would life be? We would all be empty. My grandmother used to tell me that Christmas is for kids. The joy we have in our hearts should be bestowed on them. We will continue to struggle with our sadness, but if we keep Jesus in our hearts all year round, we will feel the joy that comes to us each day. And I thought that was pretty profound. And Bridget, thank you for letting me share it with my friends.
And Gary, that's a great point, because there's going to be instances. I have my mother and father right now. My wife lost her mother and father. So we've got to be aware of the fact that there's people with losses at this time of year that are going to be going through some, depression.
And remember, for those of you that's lost someone, the grief you're feeling, the sorrow is equal to the joy you had from them in your life. So the greater your sorrow, the greater the joy that you had. Appreciate and dwell and concentrate on that joy. Okay? It's important. It will make it easier for you to get through it.
Thanks to Bridget. That was great. I will tell you this. Gary did have a good statement that he made. He said, Keith, the next time you want to give me something, run it by me. I may not want it. So I'm going to do that from now on. I can't thank you enough for taking this time. Oh, I'll send a shout out too. I met William Reedy over the weekend. William watches the program. He's from Whitesburg and also listens to the radio program. So to William and to all of our friends, thank you so much for spending this time with us. On behalf of Gary C. Johnson, I'm Keith Casebolt. We look forward to seeing you next week at the same time.
Thank you for watching Simply the Law, a program created by Gary C. Johnson. Until next week, may you be safe, blessed, and happy.